And welcome to High Off Blue Hour. We're actually going to do a bit of a behind the scenes type thing here. We're going to take a look at this animation that I actually put together for the last video that I did, which was a Photoshop Adobe Firefly Mid-Journey related video. But of course I used Davinci Resolve to make the video. And so one of the things I did was I did a very simple animation of a motorcycle, a biker riding a motorcycle through a city at night. Very, not super realistic looking, more of a kind of surreal, stylized, just playful animation video. So we're gonna actually take a look at the Fusion node structure for this animation. I'm by no means a Fusion expert, at all. I'm not a Fusion expert, but I am somebody who, for a while, I was new to Davinci Resolve, and then of course I was new to Fusion still, and kind of avoided Fusion a little bit. Like, obviously, trying to figure out as much as I could about what I could do without having to go into Fusion, which usually is the case with kind of beginners. There's kind of this, how much can I just get away with doing in the edit page without having to go into Fusion, because that's supposed to be the difficult stuff. But as I've messed with Fusion more and more, it of course got a lot easier to comprehend what's going on, how to put certain things together, and just basically achieving the effect that I want to achieve. And so we're going to take a look at this node structure. So I'm going to actually turn off the adjustment clips. Now I've got the Fusion composition in the timeline, and above that I have these adjustment clips. I'm going to turn these off actually, so the color grading is going to change a little bit in terms of just contrast and some of that stuff, but it's because we don't really need that for what we're doing here. So I'm going to turn off the adjustment clips. Got our Fusion composition highlighted. Now let's go into Fusion. All right, so this is the node structure of this entire animation. Now obviously I have the right and left side viewer up here. At different points in time, I'm gonna go up here and make these viewers larger so we can look at these closer, and then I'm going to come down here and make the node area larger so we can spend time looking at that. So just know that that's kind of going to be happening. I think it's going to be the best way to kind of show what I did here. But so this is the node structure, right? And the way this node structure looks, back when I was very much new to Fusion and just hadn't really used it at all, something like this would have looked very just kind of daunting, like maybe even a little intimidating, just kind of like confusing. There's a lot, it seems like there's a lot going on here, and there kind of is, but not as much as it seems like, especially once you kind of just get used to putting things together. So first we're going to kind of just do a little bit overview of this node structure, but then we're going to kind of look at the details of what is actually going on with these nodes here. So we've talked about it plenty times in the past if you've watched some of the Fusion template videos I've done, but you need the media out node. Everything has to eventually go into this media out node if you're going to make it reach the timeline and go on to be exported as a final project. You got to have a media out node. Since we're working with a 3D space in this particular situation, we got to have a renderer 3D node going into that media out node. So we've got our renderer 3D node, and then we have this merge 3D node. And so in this particular setup, I like to think of this merge 3D node as basically the movie set, or at least the movie set location, because everything that's appearing on screen, all of these, let's go up here and look further. Let me zoom out a little bit. Let's actually zoom out to 25%. All right, so this is kind of the 3D space here. Just for a quick reference, this is the actual camera, and this camera is what's providing the viewpoint that we get over here on this right side viewer, which is essentially the viewpoint that you're going to have in your final animation. All right, and this camera has keyframes, so it moves throughout the runtime of this scene, which that's what we'll see. But anyway, so everything that's going to be in this scene, the buildings, the different clouds, the sky way in the background, there's I've got lightning overlays right here. You see this. Now this black isn't going to be in the final thing, but this is an MP4 video right here. This is in the back of our 3D scene. I've also have a rain overlay towards the front here. Kind of hard to see at this zoom level, but it's there. So basically every single element that's going to be in the scene, you want to be at the movie set, right? So every single element is going to go into this merge 3D. And if you look at the overlay, the overview of this whole node structure, that's what it looks like. You kind of see everything eventually is leading to this merge 3D node, which of course then goes into renderer 3D, which ends up in media out. But to further kind of expound upon all of our objects showing up at the movie set, since we're working in a 3D area, for our objects to show up, they need to be attached to an image plane 3D node, right? So that they can basically be functional within a 3D image plane. So then what we have here is all of our elements have to go into an image plane 3D node. So we have our lightning, which I use a delta keyer to take out the black background of the lightning overlay graphic. So lightning going into a delta keyer, but going into an image plane 3D node, which is going into the merge 3D node. The two cloud setups that I have, each cloud has its own image plane 3D node, because the two clouds have separate keyframe paths and separate keyframe animations. They're going in different directions and things like that. So they each have their own separate image plane 3D node, and those nodes are of course going into the merge 3D. Likewise with our city blocks, these city block graphics. Let's go up here. Let's zoom in a little bit to 50%. All right, so you see these kind of three sets of, they basically look like 2D cutouts of cities, right? And it's just, they're really just copies. It's just one PNG image that doesn't have a background, just a 2D PNG image. And I just duplicated it and placed the duplicates at slightly different angles and depths within our 3D space, because I just wanted to create the illusion of a bigger city. And I felt just duplicating the one city graphic 3 times would just add some quick depth. It was supposed to be just a quick, simple animation. And so that's what those are. But each one of these has to be attached to its own image plane 3D node in order for it to appear and be functional within this 3D space. And that's what we got down here. City block at night, the first one going into an image plane 3D node, which goes into a merge 3D node. The other city block at night graphic going into an image plane 3D node, going into our merge node. Same way with the third one. It's going into an image plane 3D node, which goes into the merge node. So we have our lightning, our clouds, and our city block graphics have all showed up at the movie set location at the soundstage that is the merge 3D node here. Then likewise, we have our sky. This node right here, this is our sky graphic. And this is the thing that's way at the very back of our 3D space here. So I'm gonna go to about 25% here. And so you can kind of see as I pull back, you can see it's way at the very back of our 3D space area. And it's like it's been zoomed out to be the biggest element in the video because it's on screen the whole time. And since the camera is moving, the background needs to be big enough so that no matter how much the camera pans, the background stays completely covering the frame, because it's the sky. It's literally everywhere. So it's not like you don't want the camera to show these edges over here where, you know, the sky quote unquote ends, right? So this is an MP4 video. Actually, this is actually just a stock video of just a moon, and these clouds are actually animated and moving and all of that type of stuff. So I'm not just working with still images. That's one of the kind of the fun things about Fusion is you can bring in videos and layer those in the same way that you just layer images. So it gives you lots of options for what type of worlds and sets that you can create, right? So, but let's go down, keep talking about the nodes. So that sky graphic, that's this node right here. It's going into an image plane 3D node right here. And then I also have it going into a transform 3D node because so that I could further make it even bigger, because there's some transform things you can do in the image plane 3D nodes, those in the inspector tab, that has a transform section for that as well. But because of the size that I needed to get out of this sky, I had to actually add in a separate transform 3D node as well, and do some things in that, and then take that into the merge 3D node. Got our biker here. The biker himself has his own image plane 3D node that goes into the merge 3D. So you see what's going on here. This is the rain graphic right here, this node. Let's go up and take a quick look at that. Let's zoom in and let's go 100%. So we can zoom in on this rain graphic. So you see this is our camera right here. And then let's go up a little bit and you see this is the rain MP4 overlay. This is actually a MP4 video, again just kind of a stock falling rain animation, and the original one has a black background on it, but I used a delta keyer to remove that, so you just get the rain falling in a transparent background. And so what I did is, instead of trying to make this super big like the sky in the very back, instead of trying to make this super big so that it, you know, seems to cover the whole city, I simply keyframed the graphic itself so that it just stays with the camera. So as the camera pans, the rain always, you see the rain moves with the camera. I'm kind of just skipping a little bit down the timeline. And so as the camera is moving, the rain moves with the camera, so that the rain is actually always just on camera. And so the illusion is that the rain is covering the whole city the whole time, but it's actually not. It's just this singular, this one rectangle. It's this one rectangular section of rain that's just tracking and moving with the camera, so that it seems like it's everywhere all at once when it's really not. So that's just a little bit of trickery there. But the original point is that, let's go back down to the nodes. The original point is that the rain going into a delta keyer, much like the lightning is going into a delta keyer as well, but that's all going into an image plane 3D node, which goes into, again, the merge 3D node. This is the set, this is the movie set location. We need everything that's going to be on camera to be at the movie set, right? And so that includes the camera itself, and that brings me to the camera 3D node. So that is how we basically are able to view and film our 3D area, is using the camera 3D node, which is, let's zoom out, let's just do 50, I guess. And that's the camera right here. This is how the camera shows up in our 3D space up here on the left side viewer. And this is keyframed. The camera's movements are keyframed. So I keyframed it so that the camera would start out over here. And then as the video plays on, the camera is panning left to right across pretty much the entire length of the city, making sure to not only is the rain following the camera, but the camera is also kind of somewhat following the biker as well, as the biker moves through the city. And in the meantime, the lightning MP4 video is just playing in the background. The clouds themselves are keyframed, so the clouds are moving as well throughout the background. And the buildings, they're stationary, they're not doing any moving. So there's a little bit of a few kind of parallax type things are going on. I don't really think of this as a parallax video, but I guess technically there's parallax things are happening, but this isn't officially a video on how to do parallax, but I guess there are some principles you can take away from this to actually do parallax effects and things like that. Now I do want to make sure to make it clear that all of these different elements, the ones that have animation to them, that move, the clouds in this scene are animated. Obviously the biker is animated. I said the rain overlay actually is keyframed and animated and moving throughout the scene. Any of those elements, you obviously have to go in and do your keyframes, or at least I shouldn't say you have to. That's what I did. I keyframed the elements by clicking on the whatever image plane 3D node is actually attached to that element. So in this case, it's one of these clouds here. I clicked on that image plane 3D node and then click on the transform, and then I keyframed whatever element it was that was going to move whatever direction the object is going to be moving in. So I just want to be clear about that, because this isn't really a video about the actual keyframing process, even though it actually is critical to the final product of this video. Is actually because there's a lot of moving elements, the camera itself is keyframed, but I was more intending to focus on just the actual layout of the nodes. But that is a big part of this, just to be clear, is the actual keyframing of the elements that you want to be keyframed, the elements that you do want to move. And some of these elements, like I said, are already videos, already MP4s, so they don't need to be keyframed unless you want them to change locations. But otherwise, they're playing by themselves. The lightning effect in the background, this is basically just an MP4 video. The lightning stays in this localized area, so no keyframing is necessary for that. Likewise with the sky background at the very back, that's actually an MP4 video, but it doesn't need to be obviously doesn't need to be keyframed because it's already an MP4 and it doesn't change locations. The sky is in the same position throughout the whole video. So just wanted to make sure to mention that about keyframing specifically. And I guess I'll kind of cut the video here, because I think you kind of get the idea, but this is just a very simple layout. It's actually, and obviously the more elements you have, the more kind of obvious nodes and things you're going to have on screen. There perhaps is maybe a more simplified way I could have done this, but again, I'm not an expert at this. I'm not saying that I'm the authority on how to create scenes and in different images in Fusion. I'm just kind of showing how I put this together as somebody who was once kind of intimidated by the thought of doing things in Fusion, and now I look forward to working in Fusion. So maybe if you're a beginner, maybe you can kind of check out some portions of this video. Maybe there's some takeaways you can take from this on how you can put things together, and maybe this shows how kind of really simple a lot of it actually is. Because once again, the image nodes, once you realize that whatever element you want to have on screen in a 3D scene like this, you want it to go into an image plane node. Once you kind of just get used to that principle, it makes creating what you want a lot more easier of a concept to grasp. It's not as confusing. I am at a point now, like I said, I'm by no means an expert or anything at this, but I am at a point now where I feel confident about being able to put together what I want to put together in Fusion, like figuring out a way to make it happen. I feel a lot more confident about being able to do that now than I used to feel. And I know, if you're a beginner at this, you probably want to get to that point at some point. And so maybe this video can kind of help you get there and maybe open up your mind a little bit more to how some of these things work and how simple actually a lot of the ideas actually end up being once you just get used to it. A lot of it is repetition and things like that, because I've watched a lot of videos, read a lot of things, and just did a lot of trial and error with practicing and putting things together. There's been a lot of nights where I just was messing around in Fusion for a long time and didn't really even produce anything, and maybe didn't even learn that much, but just it got me. I was inching closer and closer to understanding things, and you eventually will get there as long as you keep dabbling around with it and keep continuing to try and learn more information. And it might be cliche, but practice, 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 because that's what kind of makes a lot of these things muscle memory. That's actually what it really is. You just kind of got to get used to the idea and the concepts of what needs to be connected to what to make certain things happen. So that's the video, you guys. Hopefully this helped you out if you're a Fusion beginner or somebody who's a little bit intimidated by Fusion. Catch you on the next one.